So the city of Tracy was incredibly lucky that we received $3.6 million from the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, ultimately being able to completely fund the city's first ever temporary homeless shelter.
So the city's first ever temporary homeless shelter. I mean, I think it's great, but at the same time, it begs the question, why is this the city's first homeless shelter? Shouldn't a city already have a shelter?
I think there's it's a pretty complex answer to that. And I think what it comes down to ultimately is that the issue with homelessness did not happen overnight, and it's not going to be solved overnight. And in the city of Tracy, we've had a few prior shelters. However, they weren't public shelters, and there was extremely long wait lists. And I think in addressing this issue, we were faced with particular challenges, be they political, economic, legal. There's been quite a few barriers in the way to getting us to the moment where we are now, where we're incredibly excited to move forward.
So now about those barriers, so it seems like we've been able to get over them to at least with the funding part. I'm not sure how many barriers there were and what element the funding part was, but how exactly did you find yourself getting over that financial barrier of starting a shelter?
So essentially it came down to, who's going to fund it. And so one of the first ways that we needed to do that was to be able to declare a crisis, and previous councils had voted on it and it didn't pass. So they were restricted in their opportunities to access certain types of funding. In early 2019, we requested a subcommittee be created to create the plan, the homelessness strategic plan. That was right after I got elected. I was really proud to be able to start that process going. And ultimately, we did declare a shelter crisis, making us open to the opportunities that were available. In addition to that, in the city of Tracy, at least, we had a structural deficit. So we were already challenged prior to all this happening. Throw a pandemic on top of it and trying to make sure the basic functions of government just continue, along with some of the legal barriers. The Martin v. Boise case provides a whole new slew of challenges to how we can address this, and it was incredibly challenging. So ultimately, over about a year or so of us declaring the subcommittee to create the plan, we worked with our community members. We worked with law enforcement. We worked with the prosecution's office. We worked with faith-based groups, and ultimately getting everyone together on the same page to decide how we're going to address it. And it ultimately culminated in the Tracy Homelessness Strategic Plan. That was finally passed, but the day that it was passed, or supposed to be passed initially, we had COVID. And so things just kind of slowed down. So ultimately, we just continued on throughout COVID, continuing these efforts, and largely due to us creating a separate financial sustainability committee, we were able to get our finances in order so we could really kind of begin to do this investment. We got incredibly lucky with opportunities from the CARES Act, CDBG funds, HAP funds, to be able to get the kind of down payment, if you will, to begin the initial steps, kind of the infrastructure we really needed. So we as a city had already committed about $2.56 million, but this is a $6.23 million project. So we're missing 3.66. So ultimately we're trying to figure out, where were we going to go to be able to fund this? And so ultimately what we did is we joined with some of our neighboring cities. We joined with Lodi and Manteca, and together we came before the Board of Supervisors and asked them to partner with us and to help us build these low barrier shelters for the homeless in each of our cities.
So just because we mentioned different cities, I want a clarifying point. When you say that, you guys came together and we hear news about a shelter in Tracy, does that mean that Tracy's going to be getting homeless from not only Tracy, but also Manteca and other cities, or is everyone getting their own shelter?
No, the city of Lodi, the city of Manteca, and the city of Tracy will each be getting a low barrier shelter. And we thought it was really important that we were working together on this because, there were valid concerns. If you only build it in one city, is it going to change kind of the way that the people are moving? And so we thought it was important that we work together on this issue to move forward to find a solution.
And speaking of moving forward, I think, where are we at right now with the project? Because you guys just got the money. Is this, the final hurdle you guys had and it's clear all the way through? What comes next?
What comes next is actually building it. So we're really excited. It looks like we're going to be able to be completed with people in our shelter by early 2022. We were hoping to do it sooner than that, but again, just kind of, it took time. The one location that we had was in Tracy public land that was undeveloped. So right now we're working on getting the infrastructure. You can't just place a shelter there. We need to make sure there's access to water and sewage and all the types of things that we need. So we want to make sure it's done correctly. So it looks like as of right now, it's going to be done in early 2022.
Oh, where's this thing going to be?
It's going to be on Arbor Road, which is in the northeast portion of the city of Tracy, just north of the 205 freeway.
Now, is this too late for, the context for this question is that not everyone, a lot of people like the idea of helping out the homeless and making sure they get the connections they need. Not everyone necessarily wants something like a homeless shelter next to them. So I'm not overly familiar with the area that this is going into. I don't know if there's residential near it. I don't know if it's, maybe you guys found a great spot, but what's been the community reaction to that selection for the shelter? And is it too late for anyone to speak out on it?
We've had various opportunities for the public to have their input on the particular location. And of course, it was mixed. It was mixed into whether we could just address this at all. That's something they're going to continuously get in governance. But this particular location, it's at the edge of a residential, but there's quite a bit of separation. It's next to, I believe, the water treatment plant. So it's an area that the city owned and that was available. And according to what we looked at different private spaces, and we just couldn't find a place that made it work for everyone. So what we did is we focused on looking at locations the city of Tracy owned, and made it a lot easier for us to make it happen. And after working with the community, with our staff and everybody, we ultimately decided this was the best place.
And at full build out, do we know exactly how many beds this is going to have?
So at stage one, so this is going to be ultimately essentially a 2 to 3 stage project in the same location. We can send you a map so you can check it out. Stage one is going to be able to hold approximately 65 individuals. But what our whole purpose behind this is that this is truly supposed to be an emergency housing option. So what we want to do is not only have this be a housing project, there's also going to be services. There's going to be access to addiction services, mental health services, job training services there on site. So ultimately the whole point is to get people in, get them the services they need to transition them out into a middle term option, and hopefully long-term options after that.
And one quick mechanical question, is this going to be a year-round shelter?
Yes.
And I guess just to kind of tidy everything up, you alluded to it earlier, but it's been a long time in the making for you guys. It's going to be your first public shelter, as you mentioned. So what's the vibe right now? How are you guys feeling about crossing that milestone?
I think we're incredibly excited here in the city of Tracy. This has been a really big priority for the past few years. We've heard what the community is saying, and everyone knows that this is a big issue for us. And, at least it's for me and for many of the other individuals I've spoken with, this comes down to a crisis of conscience. These are some of the most vulnerable people in our communities, and we need to make sure that we're addressing their needs. And so this is what I want to say. It's not quite the first step. We've had quite a few steps, but this is a huge opportunity and step to finally begin to address the issue. There's been a whole lot of talk, and there's been a whole lot of meetings, but this is finally a point where we can take action and get people into housing, into the services they need, and hopefully, enhance the quality of their lives. And when we work and focus on the people that are most vulnerable in our communities, we truly enhance our entire community.
And any last comments you have? Anything else that's important to mention that we didn't talk about?
I think that while this is a huge step, there's still a lot of work to be done. And, we're really proud of the partnerships that we have with our community-based groups and law enforcement groups. One of the next big steps that we're going to be having next month is our first ever faith-based organization roundtable on homelessness. So we're looking at the people who are already working on this issue, getting them in the same room, saying, what kind of services do you provide, making sure there's not overlap, identifying the gaps, and really trying to secure a solid portfolio of services, if you will, to make sure that all needs can be met here in a centralized location. So it's a very exciting time for us. We're really looking forward to moving forward. And I'm hoping that this type of collaboration, not with just ourselves and our partners, but with our entire region, can be a model for other areas to use as well.